Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy Rob here. Hope everyone's doing good out there. Welcome to the Flame Entertainment and Sports. Please make sure to keep up with us on Instagram and TikTok at the Flame_ES. Subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. On today's show, we're going to be starting off in the entertainment world, giving our thoughts on episodes 4 and 5 of season 4 of The Traitors. We also talk a little bit about the secret lives of Mormon wives as the premiere date for season 4, and the first trailer of the season is dropped right before I began recording this episode. And then in the sports world, we talk about Indiana defeating Miami in the national championship game in college football. I give my thoughts on Jeff Hafley being the new head coach of the Miami Dolphins, Sean McDermott being fired from Buffalo, and Robert Saleh being hired in Nashville to be the new head man for the Tennessee Titans. I also give some thoughts on the divisional round of the NFL playoffs, as well as some thoughts and predictions for the upcoming conference championship games occurring this Sunday between the Rams and Seahawks and the Patriots and the Denver Broncos. So with all that said, make sure to, once again, check us out on Instagram and TikTok at the Flame_ES. And now let's start off this episode in the entertainment world as I give my thoughts on The Traitors. All right, guys, so let's start off in the entertainment world as we're going to be covering The Traitors once again. You know, last week we covered the first 3 episodes of season 4, streaming now on Peacock. And now, this week I'm going to be giving some quick thoughts on episodes 4 and 5. They came out last week, and now going forward for the rest of the season, we're going to be having just 1 episode per week. So yeah, to cover basically episodes 4 and 5 really quick. So just to start off with some, key notes from those episodes. So Caroline was the faithful that was murdered in the face-to-face, murdered by the traitors. And basically, I believe it was 4 individuals who were left to be murdered face-to-face by the traitors. And that means that the traitors would literally, they go face-to-face and tell you that they're murdering you. And what was pretty crazy about Caroline, for those of you that don't know, she's a housewife, like from the Real Housewives of Dubai. And of course, one of the traders, actually 2 of the traders are housewives, Candace and Lisa Rinna. But Lisa Rinna was, gave some interesting words, right, to Caroline while her and the other traders murdered her. So that was really interesting to see. So yeah, that was really the first thing we saw in episode 4 was Caroline murdered, which to me, it shocked me because I didn't really understand why they would go after Caroline. I didn't feel at that point that she was any sort of threat to the traitors, like, whatsoever. I feel that she was gonna I feel like she was kind of blending in. Although I did like her in the first couple episodes, I didn't really necessarily understand the strategy behind murdering her for the traitors, honestly. But it is what it is. Caroline is out of the game now. And then next up, we had Monet murdered, following Caroline. And Monet, he was murdered in like a overnight murder by the traitors. That was like an interesting decision for me too. I liked Monet. I thought, he was like a really good faithful. He got along with most of the people in the house, it seemed like. And, it seemed like most of the people there like really enjoyed being around Monet. But I didn't really understand the thought process either behind murdering Monet, actually. Because although I thought he was a good player in the game, I didn't necessarily feel like he was a huge threat, to the traitors. I didn't know that he was picking up on, I want to say it was Candace or Lisa that I think he said something about. But regardless, I did find it weird that they went after Caroline and then Monet. But, at the end of the day, so far, we're at now through 5 episodes, is everything that the traitors have done have like truly worked out for them. And at the end of the day, they're moving forward in the process, which at the end of the day is their goal, to try to be there at the end and, win the jackpot at the end of this season of the Traitors. And then next up, the next person that we saw eliminated between these 2 episodes last week was Michael Rappaport. Of course, Michael's been, one of the most controversial figures on the show this season, beginning from episode 1 up, all the way to where he lasted in episode 5. And yeah, Michael was eliminated at the round table, and the majority of the discussion in the round table was between Michael and Colton. They're pretty much like going off on each other because prior to the round table, they kind of got in a confrontation in a way, because Colton was telling people that Michael was a traitor. Then Michael heard Colton talking about him, and then he came over and told Colton that he was a traitor. And then basically the majority of the round table discussion was between these 2 guys, like talking and basically calling each other out. And Michael, he's a very expressive and passionate guy. So he was very much, using a lot of different words to describe the type of traitor that Colton is. And unfortunately for Michael too, he even got a little offensive. He said a pretty offensive comment to Colton regarding his sexuality. So that was the main like unfortunate part, because if it weren't for that, like at the end of the day, it would have just been another classic like traders type of argument. It wasn't really anything personal, but then unfortunately Michael took it to a personal level, and unfortunately that's when the majority of the people, I believe, really like turned on Michael, and even a couple of them commented that at this point they didn't really care whether or not he was a traitor. They just wanted him eliminated, and I totally understand where those people were coming from in regards to why they voted for Michael. So yeah, ultimately after these episodes 4 and 5, as I said, Caroline, Monet, and Michael are now eliminated. And then to end episode 5, there's a couple interesting notes that are going to be super intriguing to watch for in episode 6. Coming Thursday night on Peacock at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So basically, the episode 5 kind of ends with Colton being suspicious of Lisa Rinna as a potential traitor, which of course for those of us that are watching, Lisa is one of the 3 traitors. So the hope now is, if you are rooting for the faithful, I always do. The hope now is that Colton's able to get that message across to the whole house, and hopefully they're able to, for the faithful's sake, hopefully they're able to finally eliminate another traitor. Being that they already eliminated the secret traitor and Donna Kelsey, so if they are able to eliminate Lisa, then the game becomes a lot more interesting. The faithful can gain some momentum going forward, and then ultimately Candace and Rob are gonna have to kind of buckle down and figure out a new way to continue to survive as traitors if Lisa is ultimately eliminated. And then another interesting note: so episode 5 ends with the traitors all gathered together trying to decide who they should murder next. But the catch is that the episode ends basically with a huge cliffhanger, and we'll see it at the beginning of episode 6, the result of it. So basically, like the traitors, like I said, they're gathered in their little dungeon type of area trying to decide who to murder. They ultimately pick someone. We don't know who they pick, but us or the traders don't know if that murder is going to be able to go through, because there was a challenge that happened in episode 5. Anyone had the opportunity to if they found the shield during that challenge, they had the opportunity to take it with themselves, and that shield prevents them from being murdered. Ultimately, episode 6 will begin, and we'll find out whether or not one of the individuals like did pick up a shield, and therefore if they did, then the murder will not go through. But if no one picked up a shield, then another murder by the traitors will go through starting on episode 6. My prediction as of now, I believe Colton during that game, I believe he did pick up a shield. So that's my prediction. So therefore, if Colton did in fact pick up a shield, I don't think anyone's going to be murdered. But if he didn't pick up the shield, then the traitors might have picked him to be murdered. So ultimately we shall see. But as I said, my prediction as of now is that Colton did pick up a shield, and even if he didn't, I feel like everyone thinks, oh, they're gonna murder him, but I don't think they will, because I think if they do murder Colton, they'll be even more suspicious in the house. I don't know. I feel like if they go for Colton now, it'll be a little too early for the traitors, in my opinion. And now to move on to some other breaking entertainment news. Actually, it happened a little bit before I started recording this episode today. It was pretty cool. So the first trailer for season 4 of the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives dropped, and they announced the premiere date for that season. It'll be on Thursday, March 12th on Hulu. And what's pretty cool about that, it's 10 days before the premiere of Taylor Frankie Paul's season of The Bachelorette. And of course, in this first trailer for season 4, what was really covered, it was around like a 30-second trailer, so not much was given. But a lot of the focus was on Taylor's season, filming The Bachelorette, then Whitney and Jen filming Dancing with the Stars. And then it also kind of showed Layla and her modeling during New York Fashion Week. So a lot of big time things happening for all the ladies of the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. A lot of them are advancing their career and kind of, while staying in the show, they're kind of separating and, putting themselves out there at the same time, which I think is smart, because sometimes on some of these reality shows, some of the people kind of just stay focused only on being on the show, and then eventually when that show dies out or the popularity runs out, they kind of run out of other opportunities. So I feel like Taylor being The Bachelorette, Jen and Whitney going to Dance with the Stars, Layla, being on New York and modeling during New York Fashion Week. Even Macy, I know she has her own company. She's a great businesswoman as well. So, it's cool to see them kind of stepping out of the box and doing new things and taking advantage of, the opportunity they have now with the huge platforms that they all have. So I'm excited for, the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives and The Bachelorette. Like I said, Mormon Wives will come out March 12th, and then premiere of The Bachelorette will be on March 22nd, a Sunday night, which is interesting. We never really see, The Bachelorette or any Bachelor type of show being aired on Sunday, but I think it's an interesting strategy that they're going to be starting off on a Sunday night. So yeah, guys, gonna wrap up our entertainment, portion of today's episode. Hope you guys enjoyed hearing my thoughts on episodes 4 and 5 of the Traitors, and my thoughts on the trailer and the premiere date of season 4 of the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. If you guys want to, you know, drop any thoughts you have on the Traitors or the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives below, and you're watching on YouTube, make sure to drop the comments down below. You can also share your thoughts with us on Instagram and TikTok at @theflame_es. But yeah, guys, that'll be it for our entertainment portion of this week's episode. All right, guys. So now in the sports world, it's going to be a heavily filled, football type of thing like we always, usually do on here on the podcast. We're going to be starting off by talking about the national championship game in college football, where we saw our Miami Hurricanes be defeated 27-21 by the Indiana Hoosiers. But, first off, I want to say as a Hurricane fan, I'm a super proud fan. It was the best season that I've ever experienced in my lifetime. Yes, I was born, during the last championship in 2001, but I was a baby, so I didn't really experience that. So in terms of experiencing the season and watching and, following and taking it all in, this was definitely the best one of my lifetime. So I'll always be grateful for the, 2025-26 Miami Hurricanes football team. And, this is a huge building block. In my opinion, this is only the start of Miami being back to national prominence in the college football world. And, we got to start off by crediting the ultimate leader who has kicked this all off 4 years ago, Mario Cristobal, our head coach. He stepped down from Oregon. That was a big-time job at a big-time school with a big-time program with a lot of big-time donors, including Phil Knight, right, the founder and, of Nike, and got a lot of great things going for him. But ultimately, Mario decided to come back home to become the head man of the Hurricanes. And 4 years later, here we are with, the Canes falling just literally one touchdown drive short of becoming national champions. So to me, this should only excite the fan base. And another thing that should excite everyone is that this is going to be another extra chip on all the shoulders, right, of all the individuals involved in the program, from the coaching staff to the players to the whole school, right, from the president of the University of Miami. Every single person involved now, they're going to be hungrier than ever before. And, Coach Cristobal and the Canes have truly shown that what they're doing is working fully, and they know exactly what they're doing and exactly what it takes to bring Miami back to what it once was for so many years. So, yeah, I wanted to make sure to start off with that by shouting out this team for being the true building block of years of greatness to come here in Miami, and, ultimately bring back a national title once again to the 305. But in terms of the game overall, it was an amazing game overall. I want to congratulate the Indiana Hoosiers on a incredible season, perfect season, 16-0. They get their first national championship in school history, which is absolutely unbelievable. Coach Signetti, what he's been able to do there in 2 years, taking an Indiana program that I believe had the lowest winning percentage of all D1 schools, like, all time, and take them 2 years later to lead them to winning their first national title with a team really full of transfers from different schools around the country, I mean. And ultimately they end up becoming Hoosiers because they believed in Signetti and what he was preaching, and ultimately he's shown why he's one of the rare elite coaches in all of college football. So I wanted to start off with the coach there. He did a hell of a job this season. And what he's done so far in his short tenure is just unbelievable at Indiana. And of course, Fernando Mendoza, the best player in all of college football, the Heisman Trophy winner, the national champion, Cuban American, born and raised in Miami. Technically, he was born in Boston, but he came to Miami when he was a baby. And, of course, he went to Columbus, and his college journey was crazy. Played at 3 different schools. I remember watching him a season ago when traveled to California to face him in the California Golden Bears in a classic, all-time classic game there. California had a huge lead on Miami. Then Cam Ward and the Canes came storming all the way back. And now a year later, here we are with Fernando in Indiana, beating his hometown team that didn't offer him a scholarship out of Columbus High School. Overall for Mendoza, man, congratulations to him and his family. They've taken the whole country by storm, and they've gained a lot of fans going forward now into his NFL journey. God willing, it's looking like he'll ultimately be the first pick in the upcoming draft by the Las Vegas Raiders. And then his brother, who was a backup for Fernando this year in Indiana, Alberto Mendoza, he's announced that he's transferring to become the new starting quarterback at Georgia Tech in Atlanta. So coming into the ACC where Miami's at. I thought that was pretty cool. So good luck to Alberto there in Atlanta. And of course, good luck to Fernando going forward. And ultimately that game, that national title sealing touchdown run by Fernando in the fourth quarter of this game will go down as one of the all-time great plays in college football history. It was a 4th and 5 in the red zone. They had the opportunity to go for a field goal. Ultimately, they call a quarterback draw, and Fernando was able to juke some defenders out, break some tackles, and literally dive headfirst into the end zone while getting absolutely crushed and scoring what would ultimately be the game-winning touchdown in the national title game here in Miami at Hard Rock Stadium 2026. So, he's an unbelievable player, unbelievable person, everything he stands for. He's a man of God, a man of family. So much respect to him and his family. And, that also goes for the rest of the Hoosier team. They did a hell of a job. Ultimately, to me, the main story of this game and the result we got is because Indiana is a more disciplined team at the end of the day. Miami made way too many mental mistakes, a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes, by the way, on defense specifically. In the secondary, there's too many pass interferences that were committed by the corners at Miami. But with all that said, regardless of all the mental mistakes, it came down to Miami having the ball down 6 with a little over a minute left in the game and ultimately having the chance to go and win the game by 1 point. Unfortunately, Carson Beck throws an interception due to a miscommunication with Keelan Marion, one of our receivers, and ultimately the season ends there for Miami on another mistake. But at the end of the day, there's nothing more we could ask for as fans of the Hurricanes. Like I said, this is the best team I've ever seen in my lifetime here. And I just know, like I keep repeating this, they're the ultimate building block of what's to come starting in the 2026-27 season, next season for Miami. And ultimately, they're already on the recruiting trail and the transfer portal. They're trying to bring in a big-time defensive end from Missouri. They're going after the quarterback from Duke that Manny Diaz brought into Duke this prior to this season. So, a lot of big moves happening. And like I said, they're going to be hungrier than ever before to finally bring that sixth title that we've been wanting here in Miami for a very long time. So, yeah, guys, those are my thoughts on the Indiana Hoosiers defeating the Miami Hurricanes in the 2026 College Football Playoff National Championship game. And now let's get into some NFL Divisional Round talk. And then we'll finish off, with some thoughts on the upcoming conference games and as well as some coaching news. As the Dolphins made a head coaching hire. There's been some other hires around the league, some surprise firings as well. But first off, let's start off with the divisional round. So to be completely honest with the divisional round, so in terms of the Saturday games where we saw Denver defeat Buffalo and Seattle defeat San Fran, I'm not really going to give thoughts on those games because I wasn't really able to watch those games in full. So when I'm not able to watch any of these games in full, I don't feel it's right to come on here and give thoughts on something that I didn't fully see through and through, if that makes sense. Ultimately, Denver defeated Buffalo 33-30. In that game, I only saw pieces of it, so I don't have many thoughts overall that I can really assess on in terms of why I think that game ended the way it did. And then Saturday night, we had the Seattle Seahawks destroy San Francisco 41-6. Same thing in that game. I only watched like pieces of it here and there, so I'm not really able to give full thoughts on it. But with all that said, for the 2 Sunday games, I was able to watch those games in full. And we had on Sunday, we had the New England Patriots defeat the Houston Texans. It was a dominating performance by New England. Ultimately, it was a defensive battle as we all expected. We got to give a lot of credit to Houston's defense for completely battling and keeping them in the game for the majority of the contest. Ultimately, the offense of Houston turned over the ball way too many times. They weren't able to get the run game going. They weren't able to get the passing game going. And ultimately, New England's defense in these first 2 games so far, I believe they put the world on notice that they are a legit and elite defense, because I felt throughout the whole regular season that although, Vrabel and Drake May, they're getting like credit, I didn't really feel like the Patriots defense was being fully, people weren't respecting it as much as they should. And now ultimately in these first 2 playoff games for this unit here, they're showing that they belong and that they're one of the rare elite defensive units in all of football this season. And I think a big reason for that is the pass rush has really come alive so far. And I believe for this AFC Championship game that they're traveling to Denver for, ultimately, I think the pass rush is going to have their best game of the season. And I said this a couple weeks ago. I'm going to say it now. Caleb and Chason, right? The defensive end they brought in this year in New England. I believe he's the ultimate X factor to determine how far New England makes it in. And I believe this game against Denver coming up, the Caleb Von Chase on, if he's able to have a multi-sack game, then that would very much elevate the New England team performance overall. So yeah, that was a game that didn't surprise me at all. You know, I picked New England to win that game, and they did it the way I thought they would because I had no real belief in the Houston Texans. And it's funny because most people are really, you know, hating on CJ Stroud and they're blaming him for everything. And what I've said on here multiple times within the last few weeks, I don't feel that Houston has a continuity or any consistent success on offense because during the D'Amico Ryans era, they haven't been able to find an amazing like offensive coordinator overall. They've switched from multiple offensive coordinators in a matter of a couple years that D'Amico Ryans has been there. So ultimately, to me, until Houston doesn't find consistency and continuity at the offensive coordinator coaching position, they won't make any noise, any substantial noise in the playoffs. And that's unfortunate and sad with the caliber of defense they have. They truly have a Super Bowl winning defense there, but unfortunately coaching matters so much, and I just feel they haven't been able to create that on the offensive side of the ball. And then for our final game of the divisional round, it was an amazing game that went into overtime. We saw the LA Rams narrowly defeat the Chicago Bears. You know, the Rams were up. Chicago came all the way back. Caleb Williams had a miraculous fourth down throw that he did to Cole Kmet in the corner of the end zone to send the game into overtime. And then ultimately, the Rams were able to overcome this comeback by Chicago. And the game script kind of went in a similar way to what I thought it would. I thought how I described it going into this game was that I felt that Chicago wasn't gonna be able to do this, all the comeback heroics they've done against a team of this caliber of the Rams. And ultimately, that's what happened. And although, you know, I'll give Chicago credit for tying the game and you know, taking it into overtime, ultimately, their early mistakes ended up biting them at the end of the day because the Rams are a team that they're going to take advantage of all the mistakes made by their opponent. And ultimately, that's the result of this game. I want to shout out Chris Shula once again. I've talked about him a lot on here, but he's been able to do it. That Rams defense is unbelievable. The way he's able to adjust throughout these games is just super impressive. And then, of course, on the offensive side, like Matthew Stafford, a hell of a game. You know, Puka Nacua, you could tell, was nowhere near 100%, and he was able to finish this game strong. Devontae Adams made a super clutch catch towards the end of this one as well. And he had a super quiet game early on. So, you know, the big time players stepped up in the big time moments. And the other one is Cameron Curl with a huge interception at the end of it to basically, you know, seal the deal for the Rams. So now to get into our conference championship previews, you know, I talked a little bit already about New England and Denver. Unfortunately for Denver as well, for those of you that don't know, they will be without their starting quarterback, Bo Nix, as he fortunately suffered an injury in their win against Buffalo last weekend. So unfortunately, they're going to be out without their quarterback heading into the AFC Championship at home against New England. So Jared Stidham, the backup there to Bo Nix, he will be stepping in. And Denver will have to, you know, Sean Payton, along with the rest of the offensive coaches, will have to, you know, put in a nice game plan to help Jared Stidham. He hasn't played in the game all season, and ultimately he's going to be asked to, you know, lead the way in this AFC Championship game. And yeah, the game will be taking place in Denver. I'm going with New England. I think they're the better overall team. I think they're the better coach team as well. And overall, and all units and aspects of the game, I just feel that New England is a lot better right now than Denver is. Like, I feel New England is more of the complete team at this specific moment in time. I think Mike Vrabel is the better head coach, and overall, New England, yeah, they've just shown time and time again they're a gritty group. And something I love about New England, you know, when they've had struggles specifically on offense these first two games in the postseason, they've been able to adjust. And obviously that goes to Josh McDaniels and the offensive coaching staff, but also they don't panic. They stay calm, cool, and collective, whether or not they're succeeding or not on the field. And I think that's a huge trait that we've seen in championship teams over the years in any given sport. So that's why I'm going with New England. And then for the NFC Championship, for the third time this season, we have this divisional rivalry game between the Rams and Seahawks in Seattle. I'm going with the Rams. Before the playoffs began, my prediction for the Super Bowl was the Rams beating New England, and that's still my prediction. So I have the Rams here going into Seattle and defeating their division opponent. Obviously, you know, Seattle's defense has been dominant all year. Their offense has gotten better as the season's gone on. And then you look at the Rams, and like they've also gotten better from the start of the season, you know. So these are two teams that are super high, continue to get better. Both coaching staffs are doing an unbelievable job. but I just got to ride with the Rams. I'm a big believer in Sean McVay, a big believer in Matthew Stafford, big believer in Chris Shula and that young defense right now. And I'm going to say now, I think Jared Verse and Brandon Fisk, the two young defenders on the D-line for the Rams, will have huge bounce back games in this NFC Championship against Seattle. So yeah, those are my picks. New England, I have the Rams, and now let's get into some coaching news. As the Dolphins finally made a head coaching hire. They've hired Jeff Hafley, the former defensive coordinator of the Green Bay Packers. He'll be paired up with new GM John Eric Sullivan, who also comes from Green Bay. The two have worked together for the last couple seasons. Prior to being in Green Bay, Hafley was the head coach at Boston College. That's the first time I found out about him as a coach. It was a couple seasons ago. Miami, the Hurricanes were playing a game over there in Boston College, and I just remember watching that game, and you could obviously tell we had a lot more talent, but you could tell that they were very well coached, and he was doing the best of what he could with the talent that was given to him at the time. So now it's funny all these years later to see him become the head coach of the Dolphins. So, the ultimate hope now is that Hafley and John Eric Sullivan are the pair we've been needing here in Miami for a long time. Other than his coaching background at Boston College, he's coached at Ohio State with the 49ers, with several college and NFL teams. Besides that, I don't have enough knowledge overall to give a true opinion of what I think he could be as a head coach. All I could do, is hope for the best and cheer him on. He's our coach now, and John Eric Sullivan's our GM now. So we just got to hope for the best and hope that they're the guys we've been looking for all these years, right? And then the one thing I could say that I love about the hires overall, the GM and head coaching hires, is that Hafley and Sullivan are completely on the same page. So we finally have the opportunity to create some continuity, and that's something we've never had here in Miami under Stephen Ross. He usually fires one guy, keeps one guy, fires the other. So you never have two guys that come in here at the same time and are completely on the same page in terms of the same philosophies and how they think teams should be, built from the ground up to be a sustainable winner. And they both come from one of the most successful organizations in all of the sports when you think of the Green Bay Packers. So yeah, guys, and then some other coaching news as well. In my opinion, the Buffalo Bills made a terrible decision a couple days ago following their playoff loss to the Broncos. They fired Sean McDermott after 7 straight years in the playoffs, after McDermott being the main guy there throughout Josh Allen's career. You think of where Josh Allen started as a rookie to where he is now. Who's the one constant that's been on the coaching staff this whole time? Sean McDermott. Who's the guy, the leader that brought the Bills back to being a perennial playoff team? Sean McDermott. Prior to McDermott's arrival, I remember for most of my lifetime growing up, Buffalo was a pretty terrible team until Sean McDermott got there. So I think for Buffalo, it's a terrible decision. For the Dolphins, it's actually a good thing in my opinion, but ultimately I do feel for Sean McDermott. And then besides firing McDermott, they also for some reason promoted Brandon Beane a couple of weeks ago. I came here on the podcast and said that people should be looking at Buffalo's front office because I don't think they brought in the proper talent to truly compete for a Super Bowl team. And ultimately they've been wasting Josh Allen's career there in Buffalo. At the end of the day, the owner decides to, let go of McDermott and keep Brandon Beane and now promote him not only as GM, but now to president of football operations. Ultimately, we're going to have to wait and see how that ends up turning out for Buffalo. I don't like those decisions at all. And now we're going to have to wait and see where Sean McDermott lands because there's already a lot of vacancies that have been filled. Ultimately, my hope is that McDermott lands in Vegas somehow to be the head coach alongside Fernando Mendoza. I want Mendoza to be led by a true elite coach in this league. And ultimately, the Raiders are a franchise that none of us can really trust. So them landing McDermott would be huge for Mendoza and, for them to set a sustainable foundation of success there with the Las Vegas Raiders. Ultimately, we'll see what happens. And then I want to give some thoughts as well on Robert Saleh. He's been hired as a new head coach in Tennessee and Nashville for the Tennessee Titans. Super happy about that. I'm a big Robert Saleh fan. What he did this year, returning to San Fran and running that defense, transforming it back to what it once was when he was there prior to his head coaching experience with the Jets. And you think of all the injuries he had early on, losing two of his main superstars and leaders in Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. And what he was able to do with whoever was given to him was absolutely incredible. So I think Robert Saleh is going to go into Nashville and have huge success. You think of the big D linemen there with Simmons and Sweat. And of course on offense, the young superstar QB in Cam Ward. And I think things are really looking up in Nashville now. Super happy for all the Titans fans and more especially happy for Cam Ward and of course for Robert Saleh to gain a second opportunity of being a head coach I think I'm super high now on Tennessee. I can't wait to see what they do now in the off season in terms of the draft and free agency and everything they do going forward. So yeah, guys, those are my thoughts on all the stuff that's gone on, within the past couple of days here in the sports world. You know, of course, I gave my thoughts on Indiana beating Miami. My thoughts on the divisional round, some thoughts and predictions for the upcoming conference games coming this Sunday. And then, of course, my thoughts on the coaching news with Jeff Hafley becoming the new head coach of the Dolphins, Sean McDermott getting fired, Robert Saleh being hired in Nashville. And yeah, guys, if you want to share your thoughts on any of these football topics we covered today and you're watching here on YouTube, make sure to drop your comments down here below in the comment section. You could also share your thoughts with us on Instagram and TikTok at the flame_ES. But yeah, guys, hope you guys enjoyed our sports segment for this week's episode. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Flame Entertainment and Sports. Hope you guys enjoyed hearing my thoughts on the Traitors, on the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, and of course my thoughts on, the Indiana-Miami national title game, the Dolphins head coaching news, all the rest of the coaching news we talked about in the NFL, and of course my thoughts on the playoffs so far in the NFL, and, my predictions for the conference games coming on Sunday. If you guys want to share your thoughts on any of these topics, make sure to drop your thoughts down here below in the comment section on YouTube. You can also share your thoughts with us on Instagram and TikTok at the flame_ES. Make sure to, follow us on there as well. We really appreciate it. Subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Until next time, everyone, fins up, go Canes, and take care.